The next tutorial we're going to work on is learning how to use masks. This is going to be really important when you start compositing. So go to the Adobe Photoshop topic in Google Classroom and click on the masks tutorial. What we're going to end up with is an image that looks something like this. We're going to start out with this image. So notice that there's a different background behind him. We're going to change the background. We're also going to learn to tilt his head back. So we're going to do open in new tab, and we're going to click download, and make sure that you go to your documents, go to your Photoshop tutorial folder, and click save. Again, this is a PSD file, so when we click on it, it's going to automatically open in Photoshop. Notice that there are two layers in here. The background layer, the magazine background layer, is hidden, but if we toggle that eyeball on, we can't see it. That's because the background of this image is blocking it. So that background is blocking that orange image. So instead of selecting it and deleting the pixels, what we're going to do is we're going to mask those pixels. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to select him because we need to get rid of that background. So I'm going to use the quick selection tool for this one. You could experiment with some of the other tools, but I'm going to use the quick selection tool for this one. So again, we want to do this and kind of paint on his shirt. Notice though that we might not get his nose and part of his shirt here. We're not going to get all of the hair up here. I'll show you how to refine the edge of this, but we do want to make sure that we get his nose and the back of his shirt. So we can come up here to the options panel and click add to selection. And then if we just kind of click on his nose, that should add to that selection. And then we can kind of just click and drag to add his shirt. So we just want to make sure that we get all of his shirt. We won't get all of his hair yet. I'll show you how to fix that. We want to make sure that we get his glasses. So we might need to zoom in just a little bit. We can also make this brush a little bit smaller so that we can get his glasses in there. I did get a little bit of that background in there, so I'm going to subtract, zoom in just a little bit more. I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller so I can get a really good selection on those glasses. That looks pretty good. Zoom out, and now we have him selected. So if I were to hit the delete key on my keyboard, it's going to delete him. And if you look at my layers panel, see how he disappears, but the background is still there? And if I hide my background layer, notice that there are these checkerboard pattern. That means this area is transparent. It's see-through, and you can tell that when I click on this. But I don't want to delete him. I'm going to undo this. Let me undo a couple times. I don't want to delete him because then I delete all those pixels. What I could do is if I do select inverse instead of selecting him, it makes the selection opposite, or it inverts it. And so now you can see it's selecting the background. And if I were to click delete, then I'm deleting all of those pixels. You can see here now in my layers panel that all of those pixels are gone and that the rest of this image is transparent. I don't want to delete those pixels. What I want to do instead is I want to hide them, or what we call mask them. So it's kind of like when you take masking tape and you put it on the trim when you're painting a wall so that you don't get paint on the trim. So we're going to hide it with a mask. In order to create a mask, there's a couple different ways that we could do this. I could click on this button right here, and this will create a mask. But notice, now it's masking him. But if we look at our layers panel, do you see how the area that is white in the mask is still visible in the thumbnail, but the area that is black in the mask is transparent? It's still there, it's just we're hiding it. So I don't want to mask that, so I'm going to go back to select inverse so that he's selected. And if I click on that button, now the background is black and he's white. So white makes things visible and black hides things or masks things. So again, that background is still there, it's just being covered up. The other thing that I could do is once I make my selection, is I can come up here to this button and go to select and mask. This takes me to my mask page or window where I can adjust the mask. If I do the mask button, I can double click on the mask and do the same thing. So this is taking me to where I can refine my mask. So there's a couple things that you can do here first. So the edges of him look pretty good except for his hair. Hair and fur are really hard to make manual selections of in Photoshop. Some of those new selection tools might work pretty good, but you still might need to come in and make adjustments to the selection. So the first thing that I do is I come up here to my view mode. It's up to you how you want to view the image. There's a couple of different ways that you can view it. I personally often will use this red overlay because it just helps me see what's been selected and what's not being selected. So I can see here that his hair looks really bad. It looks photoshopped. It doesn't look natural. It has too hard of an edge on it. And I can see some of that background image through his hair. And that's not going to look good when I put that on the orange background. So I'm going to zoom into his hair a little bit more so I have a little better idea of what I'm doing and can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to use this second tool over here on the left, which is called the Refine Edge Brush Tool. So I'm going to use this. I don't want a very big brush, so I'm going to make that brush a little bit smaller. So I can come in here and make this brush a little bit smaller. And I don't want to go over this whole thing. What I want to do is I want to go over the areas where the mask is covering up his hair. So I'm just holding and I'm kind of like painting this back in. So I'm just going over like the parts where the background is showing through. So trying to get rid of some of that blue area and then trying to get those little individual strands of hair so that his hair looks more natural. Because his hair is spiky, so it's going to be transparent in between these. So I'm just kind of painting over these areas. You might have to let go of the mouse so you can see how well it's painting this. So this kind of works with color. Because he has very dark hair and the background is very, very light, this is doing a really good job of finding those edges again. So what it's doing is saying, okay, there's a big contrast between his hair and that background. I have to move this down just a little bit. And so it's finding that contrast and it's erasing or masking. Got these little flyaways here. It's masking those edges, and I might come just down here along the edge of his hair because he does have a few little flyaways in here. And that's going to make his hair look a little bit more natural. Don't go too far into his hair or then you're going to make like this part transparent, and it shouldn't be transparent. So this is looking a lot better now. So I've refined that mask or that selection. Now when I hit OK and I come back to my mask, now his hair looks a lot more realistic. Doesn't look super realistic when I zoom in on it, but we're not going to be that close to it. So now his hair looks a lot more natural in here. And now when I put that background on there, now I've composited him into that background. So that's how masks work. We don't want to delete pixels because then they're gone forever. I might need to come back and add some things like fixing his hair a little bit so it looks a little bit more natural. All right, the next thing that you're going to do is we're just going to play around with a tool called Puppet Warp. So if we create a mask on here, notice that I have the option to select on the mask or select the picture. So if I'm wanting to edit the mask, I have to be on the mask, or I can double click on it and then I can edit that mask. If I want to edit the picture or the photo, I have to click on the photo. So make sure that you click on the photo for this one. And now what we're going to do is use just kind of a fun tool called Puppet Warp. So let's say I'm compositing this image and I want him to look up just a little bit more, maybe like he's looking up towards the ceiling. If I were to try to do that and composite him, I would have to, if I clicked on this and I go to Edit, Transform, Rotate, I could rotate him, but then that's not going to look natural. I've just turned all of him. And I don't want to cut his head off and then just rotate his head, because then how do I fix his neck so that he doesn't look like he's been decapitated? So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use Puppet Warp to do this. So again, click on the picture and I'm going to go to Edit, Puppet Warp. So sometimes this gets used when creating animations, and you'll kind of see why here in just a minute. So in animation, like clay animation, if you're familiar with it, in order to make things move, you have to pin parts of it down so parts of the claymation does not move. So what we're going to do is we want to pin his shirt down because we don't want his shirt to move. So we're just going to kind of click in different spots here and see how we get like a little push pin. And we're just kind of clicking on the edge of his shirt, and then when we kind of get to his neck area, we kind of want to click right in here. We want to click his collar down because we don't want his collar to move. Make sure though that you have a pin right here, because this is where we're going to pivot his neck. So make sure it's right here on the corner of this collar, and then continue adding a few more pins to his shirt. So again, his shirt doesn't move. We got to get right on the edge. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move just his head. So we're going to come back over to this pivot point here. And notice when I click on it, it becomes blue. Now if I click and hold the Option key and I kind of come out from the edge, see how it has a circle around it now? And it has this little double curved arrow. So what I'm going to do is click and drag and rotate his head this way a little bit. And I might have to do it a couple times to get his head. It's a little tricky. And just rotate it a little bit. You don't have to have it go back super duper far. But what Photoshop does then is it guesses, because that neck is going to stretch just like our neck would, but it guesses where to add additional pixels so that his neck looks natural. So just to have his head tilt forward or backward a little bit, and then if I click on another tool and click apply, then I have tilted his head without tilting the rest of the body. And so now he's kind of looking up just a little bit. So that's kind of a fun tool that you can use. Sometimes, again, they use this in animation to create small movements and then have it animate. Once you are done with this tutorial, make sure that background layer is visible. And you're going to go to File, Save As. You're going to make sure you're in your Photoshop tutorial folder. Click on the front at the start of this file name and type in your name so I know whose it is. And I know that this is the 6th tutorial. This is from lesson 6 in Classroom with a Book, and this was your start file. Make sure you keep it as a Photoshop document because I want to be able to go in and open it and see your layers and see that you did the mask correctly. Going to hit save, hit OK, and then you're going to turn this into Google Classroom.